Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and we have a new update to the Kris Tyson situation. I don't really mean to be making video after video after video on this because I just got on somebody's case for doing something like that. However, these are important information updates to the situation that seems to be evolving as the days go by. Another Kris Tyson victim has emerged. However, this time, surprisingly, it's not a minor. These two apparently met while they were above the age of 18 and also did things together while they were above the age. However, what this individual is accusing Kris Tyson of is pretty disgusting, and we'll get to read all that in a second. But before we do, if you like the content that you see here on the channel and you want to support, the best way in doing that is subscribing. We're almost at 4,000 and I'd really appreciate it if you did. Thanks. And so of course we have the story by Mooskina. This is Kris Tyson's assistant who was alleging the SA, and she says, "I was SA'd by Kris Tyson. Here's my story." For context, Ava and I were both adults when we met. Ava followed me on Twitter in November 2022 after seeing my transition timelines on Twitter when I had under 500 followers. Here's the messages to kind of prove that, and these were kind of called out as fake for some reason, and I can admit they do look a little fake from the first glance, but this got community noted, and people said that this was the high contrast mode from Android, so that's kind of why it looked bold. But moving on, she starts to say that they messaged each other from that point on every day on Twitter. Apparently Kris Tyson even confided in her that the results of HRT were amazing on her body, and that they planned on doing the same thing soon to transition themselves. Mooskina admits that even knowing this information overwhelmed her with emotions, and as someone who transitioned a month earlier and actually getting to talk to Kris Tyson and knowing who that was, she just genuinely couldn't believe that this was happening in her life. Mooskina then goes on to say that Kris Tyson and her ended up talking about her even being in a Mr. Beast video, and here's the screenshots to kind of prove that. Kris Tyson's talking about how they could definitely figure something out and get her into a video. She says that Kris was the most famous person to ever really show her that type of attention, and then they started to love bomb her to make her feel like the most important person in her life. But then that's when the conversation moved to Snapchat, and she says that while she was under the impression that she was working on getting a Mr. Beast feature, they started to have video calls on Discord, and that's when Ava would begin to ask her to masturbate with her on video calls multiple times. And of course, with this kind of power dynamic, she felt like she had to say yes if she wanted to get the job or get into a video. She then goes on to say that on one occasion she even asked her to join her in a masturbation call, even though Tyson knew that she wasn't feeling too well, which ended up making her puke a few minutes after they started. Our conversations always leaned into the direction of the affectionate and sexual, and she sent me a lot of sexually explicit Snapchats, messages, photos, and videos. Our relationship was very confusing to me, and I didn't fully realize I was being coerced at the time. These two did eventually meet up after Kris had bought her a one-way ticket to Greenville. Of course, she was still under the impression that she was going to get into a Mr. Beast video. However, the first night she spent in Kris Tyson's house, and that's where they ended up cuddling and kissing each other, which immediately led to Kris Tyson taking her clothes off and asking for some oral sex, of which Mooskina complied. And of course, when this was done, she realized that this was a one-sided exchange. This would apparently go on for the next week, and she even details that one time while they were engaged in the act, Mr. Beast ended up calling Kris as they were doing their thing, and Mooskina ended up hearing some information that made her feel special in a way because it was private to the rest of the world. She would eventually find out that Kris Tyson had no say in who gets casted in a Mr. Beast video, to which she then promptly told Kris to buy her a ticket home, and home is where she went. She says, "I eventually asked Ava to buy me a ticket home and flew home the next day. Leaving Ava's house was incredibly difficult to process emotionally after that week. I remember trying to hold myself together while traveling so that I wouldn't break down in public. When I got home, I spent the rest of my night crying uncontrollably without fully understanding what had happened to me. Ava and I remained in contact, but she did not show me the same level of attention and affection as she did before. This was the first time we went through a cycle of her love bombing me, then to using me, then to falling for someone else, then treating me like I'm an annoying jealous ex, and then coming back when things didn't work out." She then goes on to say that shortly after that first week she went on a trip to Japan, but things didn't turn out the way that she expected, so she came back early and also offered her a job as an assistant for her, to which she then quit her job on June 16th, and she was supposed to start a 2-week trial, and here's the messages that support that. She goes on to say that during this trial period in my employment, Ava continued to receive oral sex multiple times from me, and I started to feel like I was being coerced. Because I was starting to feel that way, I decided to try and avoid all physical engagement between us or anything that could lead to more one-sided sexual acts. She says that on July 29th, while they were watching TV together alone in his living room with no warning or prior physical engagement or sexual conversation, she took off her pants and started touching herself in front of her. And of course, with the current situation with her just quitting her job and moving in with Ava, she didn't really feel like she could say no, so she ended up going through with the non-consensual act. She says that this was the first moment that truly broke her. Nothing was enjoyable after that, and she said it felt like it would never end, and while they were going through it, her body just hurt performing the act. It took her a few days to accept what had happened, all the while she was dealing with a lot of emotions due to her trip and spending time with most people that she just met for the first time. Now, to summarize most of the past things that are in this tweet, coming up to present day, the aforementioned cycle that Kris would put her through kept happening until Easter 2024, where Kris went went with Mooskina to visit her family. At that point, they were very close emotionally, she says, but things started to change a few days after Easter when they traveled to Los Angeles, where Kris met up with a friend that she was sexually attracted to. Apparently, Mooskina was looking for an open relationship at this point anyways, so it didn't really bother her. Kris ended up hooking up with her that night, calling the partner his boyfriend and saying that they were in an official relationship at this point, when he never really did that with Mooskina. She of course had a problem with this and then told him as much. Here are the messages if you want to pause to read that. This of course led to a lot of fights between them, which eventually led to her moving out of Kris Tyson's house, after which she says that moving out she had an agreement with him that she would keep her job as a part of the Mr. Beast crew. However, when she reached out to Kris Tyson after moving out, she was informed that they were already trying to replace her. And of course, here are these messages that she posted on Twitter. Ava eventually blocked her on everything after finding out that she was talking about the SA incident. She then goes on to say that I learned Ava told them that I had decided to resign on my own free will, and the first they heard of me leaving was that first week of July. I informed them what was actually going on with my registration, and it became pretty clear that Ava was not truthful about what was happening with anything that had transpired between us during my employment. A few days later, I told them about everything that had happened between us, which led Mr. Beast to launch a third-party investigation into the matter. Of course, she ended up providing proof in the chat logs and even a list of people who have seen them be physical with one another. She says that this was over 2 weeks ago, and in that time, she had not heard back from anyone despite asking for an update twice. And apparently this was around the time where the whole Shad Man thing became public and where Kris Tyson was exposed for inappropriately talking to minors. She says that seeing all of this come out has put her in a particularly unique and uncomfortable position. However, she claims that she knew very little about the whole CP thing. She closes out things by saying this: "It was already extremely difficult for me to navigate moving on from being sexually assaulted and being taken advantage of by someone I cared about and someone who had immense power over me. Seeing everything this week has been extremely stressful. It has been equally difficult to see people respond in bad faith with transphobia as it has been to see people blindly defend Ava and disregard evidence because she is transgender. And I feel like the only way to move forward with my life is to talk publicly about what happened. I don't want hush money. I don't want clout. I just want to be able to move on with my life and close this chapter." Now, of course, to me, this is a lot of surprising information, as I'm sure it is to you. However, some people at this point might not be so surprised. For those of you who are new here on the channel, I have this saying whenever stuff like this comes up, and I'm pretty sure I've already used it for the Kris Tyson situation, but if I haven't, here we go. Not everybody needs to be famous. Not everybody needs to be in a position of power, because like I usually say, and has been said before, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You give someone enough power, you know damn well that they're going to abuse it. Not everyone's like this, no, but I mean, eventually, either something from your past will come out and those skeletons in your closet that you've been hiding will be exposed to literally everyone, or you'll be exposed for something that you've recently done or something that you're currently doing, and I guess in the case of Kris Tyson, will become a detriment to literally everyone around you. However, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit the like button. If you want more content similar to this, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Sub up, stay safe, and peace.